Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be testing out two Chanel foundations against each other, and these are the Chanel No.1 de Chanel foundation, and the other one is the Beiges Healthy Glow foundation, which is hydration and Longwear. So I have both of these that I did videos on my channel, which I'll link down below or somewhere in this video for you so you can check those out. But I actually had a comment on the video for the No.1 Chanel foundation, and someone was asking me what it was like compared to the Beiges foundation, so I thought I'd go ahead and test these out and see how they look during the entire day. So I'm going to put one foundation on one side of my face and then the other foundation on the other side of my face. I've used exactly the same primers. I'm going to use the rest of the makeup exactly the same on both sides and just do my makeup how I usually would, just having half of it one foundation and half the other foundation. So if you're new to my channel and you enjoy this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below, and also make sure to hit the bell icon just so you're notified every time I upload a new video. It's actually been about 6 months since I last used the Beiges foundation, so I'm not really too sure how it's going to go against the No.1 Chanel foundation because it's been such a long time since I tested it out, so I can't really remember exactly how it goes on the skin, exactly how long it lasts on the skin as well. So the Beiges foundation retails £43. It has 35 different shades available, and this also says it's formulated with colonico extract, which forms a barrier on the skin surface that protects against the harmful effects of indoor and outdoor pollution, a formula that hydrates the skin all day long, protects it day after day. Its Longwear formula ensures a flawless complexion for 12 hours. Silicate powder creates a fine layer on the skin surface for a seamless result and prolonged wear without an oily or sticky feel. And the No.1 de Chanel foundation retails for £55 and it only has 20 shades, so it's a lot less than the Beiges foundation. Both of them have 30ml or 1 fluid ounce, and I have the shade BD31 in both of them. And with this foundation it has a red camellia flower, so this is the main ingredient that's in the entire skincare and makeup collection. It also has 5 signs of aging. They also help to fight as well. Wrinkles will appear diminished, pores are visibly refined, and the skin's elasticity is restored. So this is a foundation that has a lot of skincare in there, and apparently it's meant to give you a lot of benefits after you've been using it for a little while as well. I haven't been testing this out for a long time. It's probably been about 3 weeks I've been testing this foundation out, so I can't really tell you what it's like with these skincare benefits. And with the entire No.1 de Chanel line, this has sustainability in their packaging, and it is one of those that's supposed to be really good for the environment, so you can tell that the packaging is not as grand as the other ones. So the glass bottle is not as thick as the other ones, and you do have a plastic lid on there as well, so it is a little bit different compared to the two of them. But as you can see, the shades are very similar. I feel like that the No.1 one might actually be a little bit darker and a little bit more yellow, but I don't know if that's because I only actually have half of the foundation left in the Beiges foundation, because like I said, it used to be a go-to of mine. It used to be a holy grail. We're gonna see how it looks on the skin anyway and test it out and see if the colours are the same. I didn't really notice a difference when I was using this one because it still matched me, but putting them both together, it's going to be quite good to see if the shade is actually the same. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and we're going to test out both these foundations and see how they go on my skin. So we're all zoomed in and ready to test out the foundations. Now I've already primed my skin. I've used my two favourite primers that I use all the time. So I have two from e.l.f. I have the Blemish Fighting Putty Primer and then the Matte Putty Primer. So if you don't know what my skin type is, I have acne prone skin, I have very oily and sensitive skin as well. So it's one of those where a lot of foundations don't tend to work for me because I am so sensitive that pretty much everything tends to break me out. But at the moment I'm having a breakout. It's actually looking better than it did the other week, so getting a bit of improvement there. So I am going to be applying these using a beauty sponge. I hardly ever use a brush just because I don't feel like I can get the best look out of it, and for me, I'm just not a brush person. I've tried so many times to like brushes, but I can't really get on with them, so I'm just going to be using a beauty sponge, and I'm going to be using the same one, but I'm going to be using different sides of the sponge. I'm already primed and ready to go, and this is what my skin looks like naturally. So you can see I have a lot of redness, a lot of blemishes, but I feel like that because my skin isn't perfect, this gives it a really good go. So you can see if you do have acne, if you have blemishes, if you do have redness, it really shows you how it covers them up and how it actually looks if you do have this type of skin like I do. Now I have already cleaned my sponge, but it is not looking the best. Just going to take one pump of the No.1 foundation, and I'm going to apply it to this side of my skin, and then we'll compare it and see what the two look like. Now I have noticed that with this foundation it tends to be a light coverage foundation, so I do need to build it up. Now on the website it doesn't actually say what the coverage is like, it just says that it's a buildable coverage, and it does say that it's for all skin types. I haven't really noticed any problems with my sensitive skin, so it tends to be working out pretty well. So as you can see, with one layer is a very, very light coverage. Now, it doesn't cover up all the blemishes, it doesn't cover up all the redness. You can still see quite a lot of blemishes and redness peeking through here, especially on this side of my head. But it does look very different compared to the other side. So this is with one layer on, this is with nothing on my skin. So I am going to be doing a second layer just because that's what I do when I use this foundation anyway. I have to build it up. I'm just putting on half a pump and I'll blend it out so you can see what it looks like and how it builds up. And this is with 2 layers, so you can see that I do get like a light medium coverage. You can still see a lot of blemishes, a lot of redness that are peeking through, but it has covered it up a lot more to this side, so you can see that there is a bit of a difference. You do get sort of like a semi-matte finish on this side. It's not fully matte, it's not fully dewy, but it still looks quite nice on the skin. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Beige foundation now on the other side, and again I'm just going to do 1 pump on the other side, and then you can see what the coverage looks like. And I'm using this side of the sponge as well, so you can see it wasn't the side that I used the other foundation on, and we'll just pat this in and see what the coverage is like. I think I actually prefer the coverage of this foundation. I feel like this one looks a lot more natural on the skin, but like I said, I haven't used it for about 6 months anyway, so it's going to be quite good to see them compared to each other. And this is what one layer of the Beige foundation looks like. So it looks a lot more natural on the skin, and it looks a lot more glowy compared to the other side, if you can see. So you can still see that there is a lot of redness, a lot of blemishes, but this one just seems to look a little bit more lightweight to the other side. And as you can see, this one looks a little bit more matte, this one looks a little bit more dewy, but this one is again supposed to be for all skin types, and this one is supposed to feel very lightweight on the skin. They're meant to be both anti-pollution ones as well, so they both work pretty well with that. I'm going to go ahead and build it up, and then we'll see if the coverage looks the same as the other side. And this is what 2 layers of each foundation looks like on the skin, and I can actually see a difference. So I feel like with the side with the number 1 foundation, it looks a little bit cakey, and it hasn't really covered up my redness that well. It just looks quite blotchy, and I did say that when I did my first impression. I was saying that it looked a little bit blotchy on the skin. It didn't build up as well as the Beige one. The Beige one, you can still see a bit of redness and you can still see my blemishes, but I don't feel like it's as obvious. I feel like the Beige foundation just builds up a little bit better, but you can still see redness on both sides. It's not full coverage and it won't cover up all blemishes and all redness. I actually feel like they look around the same with the shininess, and it is looking a little bit blotchy where they met in the middle as well. I feel like the Beige one just builds up a lot nicer. The Beige size looks more natural than this side. This side, like I said, you can still see a lot of redness that's peeking through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of my makeup just how I usually would, use exactly the same products. Then I'm going to come back, show you what it looks like. So I've just finished off my makeup and this is what it looks like, and they look very, very similar compared to each other. Now this side I have a little bit of cakiness around my chin, but then on this side I have a bit of cakiness above my eyebrow. So it's one of those where both of them don't look perfect on the skin, and the rest of my makeup went on very easily. The thing is, with my bronzer, it went on a little bit harder on this side compared to this side, but overall my makeup looks okay. I'm not really too fussed about it. It looks pretty good, and they don't really look any different compared to each other now that I've put the rest of my makeup on. So this is what it looks like, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this on for the entire day and see how it goes. So I will do a check-in in a couple of hours in natural lighting, just so you can see exactly what it looks like in natural light, so you can see if there are any differences. But the colour match is exactly the same. I was a little bit worried because one of the foundations in the bottle is a little bit darker than the other one, but on the skin they look exactly the same, and I can't actually notice that there's any difference going on. So it's now 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but I have had this foundation on since about 1:30. That's when I finished off the rest of my makeup. So I'm going to come back in a couple of hours and give you an update and let you know how it's going. It's now 5:30 in the evening and the sun has gone down, but what I did do is I took a little bit of a video at, I think it was 4 o'clock while I was out in natural lighting. So by that time it had been on for 2.5 hours, and that was actually when I finished my makeup, but I actually finished putting the foundation on at 1 o'clock, so I'm going to do it from when I finish putting on the foundations, just because then you know exactly how long the foundation's been on for. So it'd been on for 3 hours by 4 o'clock and it didn't really look much different. I could see that I had some dry patches on my chin. It wasn't looking oily and they pretty much looked exactly the same. I did ask Neil what he thought about each side when I first put it on, and he actually said that he prefers the expensive side to the other side, and I think it was because it was looking a little bit more patchy on the beige side. But as you can see on the video for it, you can see that it pretty much looks exactly the same as when I first applied it. So now it's actually been on for 4.5 hours, and now I'm going to give you another check-in just so you can see exactly what it looks like. They look pretty much exactly the same on both sides. I can't really see a difference. The only real difference that I can see is that my head looks oilier on the #1 side, and I can see that some of my makeup's come off on the side of my head on the right side as well, so right on the top. It's also come off on my jawline as well on that side, but then the beige side, it looks like it's going pretty good. So I feel like the beige side is actually holding up better than the #1 side. But if you do look at my chin, you can see that there's a lot of cakiness around the chin on both sides, and the reason for that is because I have a lot of acne products that I use for my skin, so every now and again my skin does tend to get quite dry, and it always gets dry around my mouth. That's just how it always goes. But something that I did notice was when I was out, I noticed that this part of my nose, so this side of my nostril, was actually stinging a little bit just under here, but this side I had no problem with it at all. It was just literally this side. And then I also noticed that it felt a little bit itchy down here on the #1 side as well, and then the beige side was completely fine. Now I don't know if that's because the beige side is suitable specifically for sensitive skin, but also this side says it's for sensitive skin as well, but also the beige side says that it's non-comedogenic as well, so it won't clog your pores. So I feel like at the moment the beige side is actually holding up better. So I'm going to come back at the end of the day, give you my final check-in and let you know how it's gone. It's now the end of the night and it's 11:30 in the evening, so I've had both these foundations on now for 10.5 hours and I'm so tired, and I feel like now I can give you a really good review and let you know how it's done. So I really did put these foundations to the test. I had them on for 10.5 hours. A normal work day is 8 hours, and that's what I always aim for when I do my wear test. Looking at my skin, there's not really much difference between the two. From far away, they look pretty much identical. There's not really much difference. I am oily as the other one on my forehead and then also my nose. My nose has come off on the same places on both sides of my nose. The beige side, I feel like I have more of the foundation that's come off where I put my bronzer. I did have a weird thing to do with my bronzer today. I don't really know what it is. Come off mainly where I've got the bronzer on the side of my face. However, on the other side, the foundation has come off on the bottom of my face and a lot of it's come off. It's one of those where it has pretty much done the same amount of wear for the entire day. There's only a little bit really in it. So both these foundations, they are expensive, but they are two completely different prices. So you have the beige that is £43 and you have the #1 foundation which is £55. So there's quite a lot of difference. There's £12, and the #1 has all the skincare benefits in there, so anti-aging, the red camellia flower, everything like that is sustainable packaging. And then the beige one is specifically for sensitive skin. It's also non-comedogenic and it's also anti-pollution and lightweight as well. So you do have two pretty different claims of both the foundations. So if you do like sustainability and the fact that it has a lot of natural ingredients, then this actually is a pretty good foundation. It's just if you do want to spend the extra £12. When I first applied these, I actually preferred the beige, how it looked on the skin, because it looked very natural. I feel like it built up a lot better than the #1 foundation, because if you noticed, it looked pretty patchy on this one when I tried to build it up, and it did look a little bit more matte. Not a lot more matte, but a tiny bit more matte. And then this one looked a little bit more glowy on the skin. The beige foundation covered up my redness, my blemishes a lot better than the #1 foundation. However, when I applied the rest of my product, I had a bad bronzer day, and it seemed to be that it didn't want to go on this side of my face, but then on this side it was completely fine. And I can still see now, looking at the side of my face, that my bronzer, blush and highlighter are still on with the #1 side. And then on the beige side, I literally have no bronzer, the blush, and then the highlighter. So my highlighter looks better on this side than on this side, but my bronzer looks better on this side than this side. It's a very strange one for me, because I like them but there's not really much difference with them. I mean, they're not the best foundations for oily skin. So if you do have oily skin, I would say go for the Velvet foundation or a matte foundation if you do want to control your oils. These control my oils pretty good. It's just I am very, very oily, but having these on for 10.5 hours, I would assume I would be oily anyway because I'm an oily person. It's just so strange that most of the foundations are pretty much worn off exactly the same, but I do have a lot of dryness around my mouth just because I am using a lot of acne products for my skin, so that's just where my skin tends to dry out anyway. So you can really see that both the foundations tend to cling to the dry patches a little bit more. The number one clung to them more than the Beige one, but you can see that it's looking cakey on both sides at pretty much exactly the same. So on my top lip it's looking cakey, and then on my chin it's looking cakey. The number one did tend to make my skin a little bit itchy during the day, so when I did my first check-in I got a little bit itchy underneath my nose and then also on the bottom of my chin, so it was really weird because I didn't get it on the other side. When I did first apply it, I preferred the Beige, how it built up, and the number one I felt like just felt a little bit blotchy and it didn't really build up that well. Then when I applied the rest of my makeup, I preferred the way that the number one looked. The Beige one just didn't really work out for the bronzer for some reason, just had a bad bronzer day. And then I asked Neil what he thought, and he actually preferred the number one side. And when I did my check-in, I actually preferred the Beige side because I felt like the number one side was coming off a lot more than the Beige. Neil actually said, because I asked him what he thought, he looked at my skin and he said that they looked exactly the same. And then when I pointed out about the differences of both of them and where they've been coming off, he said that he preferred the Beige exactly the same as I did. I actually think I prefer the Beige side. Now I know that it has come off a little bit more on this part of my face, but I feel like that this one you can build up a lot more, and I feel like it did actually last longer on my skin than the number one before it started breaking away. So I feel like that if you are working a normal 8-hour work day, I'd say go ahead and get the Beige one just because I feel like it lasted longer on my skin. Whereas with the number one, I feel like I had some issues really when I applied it, and then at about the 4-hour mark I felt like I had a little bit of issue. Also with the number one foundation, it's not as easy to actually build up, so if it is coming off on certain areas you can't really build up. So you can, but it doesn't really go on the nicest. It can look a little bit cakey. So if I was going out now, I'd probably have some issues with building it up around here. However, with the Beige one, if I needed to build this up on here, I would have absolutely no issues. I have actually worn this at the beginning of my work day, and then I've gone out after work and all I've had to do is just put on a little bit more of the foundation on specific areas, and then I've been good to go. It builds up very easily. In all honesty, like I said, they look the same really. They wore off pretty much the same, but I do feel like the Beige one lasts a little bit longer before it starts to break away. But both of them are very, very similar, so it is one of those as well where, you know, you have to think about if you prefer sustainability, natural products, natural ingredients, or if you just want to have something that you have super sensitive skin with, you want anti-pollutants in there as well, and you really just want to save a little bit. So this does have a lot of skincare, but I haven't been using it enough to actually see if it does make a difference. So you have tried out these foundations. If you like any of them, if you don't like any of them, if you prefer one to the other one, then just comment down below to let me know, and make sure that you give this video a very big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next video, guys. Bye!